Infosys layoffs. Okay, that headline, it definitely grabs your attention, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Sparks a lot of chatter.
Yeah, and questions about, what's really going on inside a huge tech company like that. But what if we looked past the immediate news and tried to understand the core things at play when any big company adjusts its workforce?
Yeah.
What can you actually learn from it, whether you're in tech or not?
Exactly. That's the plan for this deep dive. We've pulled together insights on, well, several key areas.
Okay.
How companies tend to handle underperforming employees, for one. Then there's the specific legal stuff in India, how they engage, and potentially separate from staff, crucial area.
Right.
And of course, upskilling, why that's just so vital now for any company that wants to adapt.
Adaptability, yeah.
And we'll ground all of this in Infosys' latest financial results just to get that real-world context. The aim isn't just Infosys, really. It's to give you a clearer picture of workforce management today.
Got it. Okay, so let's start with something universal. Underperformance. We kind of know it when we see it, right? Work's not quite there, deadlines slip, maybe someone seems a bit checked out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what's the actual ripple effect on the business?
Well, it's pretty significant, actually. It's not just about that one person's output falling short.
Right.
It can really drag down the whole team's productivity. Others have to pick up the slack, which, inevitably hits morale.
Yeah, I can see that.
And if the quality of work dips, customer satisfaction can suffer. Plus, honestly, often underperformers end up leaving anyway, which just causes more disruption down the line.
Like a domino effect then. So how did companies used to deal with this? I feel like I've heard about some pretty ruthless methods.
You're probably thinking of stack ranking, right? Some big names used it: GE, Microsoft, Amazon.
That's the one.
Yeah, basically comparing employees directly against each other, identifying the, let's say, bottom percentage for improvement plans or sometimes termination. Interestingly, Google apparently used a version, but more positively, to find top performers for promotions. But the trend now, definitely moving away from that, towards more supportive approaches.
Okay, so what are we seeing instead? More supportive how?
Well, think about getting a fuller picture, like 360-degree feedback, hearing from peers, managers, maybe even direct reports. Lots of places use OKRs now, objectives and key results. That gives real clarity on goals and how they're measured.
Right, clear goals.
Psychological appraisals can sometimes help understand underlying issues, and there's a much bigger push for continuous feedback, not just that once-a-year review.
Okay, so let's say a manager spots someone struggling. What's the first move? Just jump in.
The crucial first step, really, is just recognizing the signs. Is someone less engaged? Is the work quality dropping? Are they often late, withdrawn?
Noticing the pattern.
Exactly. And documenting specific examples is vital. Then you need a conversation, a private one, to try and understand the root cause.
The why.
Precisely. Is it unclear expectations? Are the goals unrealistic? Maybe there are personal challenges impacting work. You can't fix it if you don't know what's broken.
Right. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Understand the why first. Then what? After that initial chat.
Then you build an action plan, ideally together with the employee. That collaboration helps get buy-in.
Right. Makes them part of the solution.
Exactly. The plan should clearly spell out what actions will each person take, what's the timeline for seeing improvement, what support is available, maybe extra training or mentoring, and for serious issues, what are the potential consequences?
So it's much less about pointing fingers and more about, okay, here's a path forward and here's the support. How do you track if it's working?
That's where performance coaching comes in. A good manager can use everyday interactions as coaching moments, guiding improvement. Regular specific feedback is also critical. Not just do better, but here's what worked well, and here's where we need to see improvement on X or Y. Using that 360 feedback, again, can show the wider impact. And importantly, you've got to document these conversations. Write it down. Dates, specifics, agreements.
What if it just doesn't work? Despite the plan, the coaching, the feedback, still no improvement.
Well, ultimately, yeah, a difficult decision might be necessary. Letting ongoing underperformance slide isn't fair to the rest of the team and impacts the work environment.
Right.
So separation might be the outcome. But even before that, sometimes just encouraging a better work-life balance or even revisiting if the role is truly the right fit for their skills, that can sometimes make a difference. A small tweak might be all that's needed.
That's a good point. Is it the person or the role fit? Okay, that covers the individual side well. Now, thinking about Infosys, huge presence in India. What are the key legal things companies need to know about hiring and potentially letting people go there? It's different, right?
Oh, it's definitely different and really interesting. For starters, terms like intern or trainee aren't actually legally defined in Indian labor laws like you might expect.
Really? So they're just...
Generally seen as students getting practical experience. However, there is the Apprentices Act from 1961. That sets up a formal framework for apprenticeship.
Okay, so there is a structure for some.
Yes, for companies with 30 or more workers. They have obligations, engage a certain percentage of apprentices, meet quotas for certain categories.
So what does that involve for the company? Just paperwork?
More than that. Formal contracts, ensuring proper training. Bigger companies even need separate facilities. There are rules on working hours, minimum stipends, qualified trainers, leave, holidays.
Wow, quite detailed.
Yeah, and they need to follow the Employees Compensation Act for injuries, keep progress records, even have a policy on hiring apprentices after their term. And if the employer breaches the contract, they might owe compensation.
Interesting.
Also, importantly, under certain conditions, these apprentices aren't usually considered employees under other big laws, like the one for the retirement fund, the EPFO.
Okay, so apprenticeships are one thing. What about all the other interns or trainees who aren't part of that formal act? Is that a bit of a gray area legally?
It can be, yes. There's definitely a risk they could be misclassified as regular employees if their training doesn't meet very specific criteria set out by the EPFO.
That checks.
Things like, is the training an integral part of a recognized course? Is a trainee going back to their educational institution afterwards? Is the course actually relevant? Is it a limited number of trainees? You know, there was a government scheme called NEMEM, the National Employability Enhancement Mission. It had a bit of back and forth on whether trainees were employees before it was discontinued. It just shows this area keeps evolving.
Sounds like companies really need to structure those programs carefully then. Okay, shifting to regular employees. How does termination work in India? Is it anything like the at-will employment concept we hear about elsewhere?
Absolutely not. That's a key difference. At-will employment just isn't a recognized thing in India.
So you can't just fire someone?
No. You need a valid reason, either reasonable cause or proven misconduct. The cornerstone law here is the Industrial Disputes Act of 1947. Massive piece of legislation. Plus, there are state-specific rules, Shops and Establishments Acts, things called standing orders, which set out workplace rules, and of course the employment contract and HR policies themselves.
And the contract matters.
Very much. If an employee's contract gives them better terms than the basic law, more notice, higher severance, whatever the contract usually wins out.
Okay. And is there a difference legally between firing one person versus, say, a larger layoff?
Not fundamentally in the basic principles, but there are specific procedures for larger workforce reductions, what's often called redundancy or retrenchment.
Okay, so what are the accepted reasons courts recognize for termination?
Primarily, it boils down to non-performance or redundancy. But for any termination, the key is meticulous documentation. You have to prove your case.
Documentation.
Exactly. Now, for retrenchment, which specifically means terminating a workman, a legally different category, for reasons other than discipline, there are very specific steps.
Like?
Usually, providing notice, often 21 days before, or paying them instead of notice. There's usually a seniority rule, last in, first out, and statutory compensation, typically 15 days average pay for every year they've worked there.
Okay.
Plus, those state-level shops and establishments acts often have their own notice or pay-in-lieu requirements for termination based on reasonable cause.
What if the reason is specifically poor performance? Is there a legal checklist for that?
No specific checklist laid out in law, no. But again, it comes back to evidence. You need solid documentation showing the underperformance.
Right. Yeah.
You need proof you gave them clear written feedback about it. And crucially, that you gave them genuine opportunities to improve.
So warnings and chances.
Exactly. There's no legal requirement for something called a last chance agreement, but having one can definitely show you went the extra mile before termination.
And what if it's not performance, but something like, I don't know, fraud? Or just breaking major company rules?
That falls under misconduct. This is often defined in those standing orders I mentioned, or sometimes in the Shops Acts.
What kind of things count as misconduct?
The usual suspects: fraud, theft, being absent without permission repeatedly, refusing reasonable instructions, sexual harassment, deliberately damaging property, things like that.
Okay.
But even then, you generally can't just fire someone on the spot. You usually need to conduct a fair disciplinary inquiry. first. Give them a chance to respond to the allegations.
So due process is important there too. Are there situations where termination is just flat out illegal?
Yes, absolutely. Several key ones. You can't terminate a woman while she's on maternity leave, for instance.
Okay.
Or an employee who's receiving sickness or disability benefits under the Employees State Insurance Act. Or someone off work due to illness related to pregnancy.
Right, protected categories.
And of course, any termination for discriminatory reasons, disability, gender identity, HIV status, things like that is unlawful. Even during probation, while the rules are often simpler, they're still governed by SHOPS Acts and the contract. Some states, like Maharashtra, even require written confirmation after probation ends successfully.
Okay, one last legal bit. When employment does end in India, what payments are employees typically entitled to?
It can be a package of things. For workmen undergoing retrenchment, there's that specific compensation we talked about. Often there's pay in lieu of notice if notice wasn't worked. All their earned but unpaid wages, naturally.
Right.
Gratuity is a big one. That's a statutory payment, kind of like a long service bonus, usually for those with 5+ years of service in companies with 10+ employees.
Okay, gratuity.
Payment for any accrued but unused vacation leave. And any other outstanding dues according to their contract, maybe bonuses, vested stock options, that sort of thing.
Wow, okay. It really underscores the need for companies, especially large ones like Infosys operating there, to be incredibly careful and well documented.
Absolutely. It's a complex landscape.
Right. Okay, let's switch gears a bit now to something just as critical, especially in tech. Upskilling and reskilling. You mentioned it earlier.
Yes, hugely important. The digital skills gap is, well, it's a massive challenge. You see reports all the time saying a big majority, like 65% of hiring managers are struggling to find people with the right skills.
65%, wow.
Yeah. So that makes upskilling, which is basically enhancing your current skills, and reskilling, learning new skills, maybe for a totally different role, absolutely vital.
Okay, so what's the benefit for the employees themselves? Why should they bother?
Well, for you, the listener, think about it like this. Upskilling isn't just adding a bullet point to your CV. It's potentially building a bridge to jobs that will be really in demand in, say, 5 or 10 years.
Future-proofing your career.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Proactively figuring out what those critical skills are going to be and finding ways to learn them now. That's smart. It leads to better career prospects, maybe faster promotions, definitely more job security, and often greater job satisfaction too, right? Mastering new things feels good. Plus, personal growth. Reskilling offers similar perks, opening doors to completely new careers, which is crucial with automation and AI changing things so fast.
All right, new paths become possible. And for the companies investing in this, what's their payoff?
Oh, the advantages are huge for them too. Upskilling directly boosts productivity. People learn new tools, better ways of working. It sparks innovation, brings in fresh thinking. It's also massive for retention. Employees feel valued when a company invests in their growth. They're less likely to leave.
Makes sense.
And fundamentally, it builds a more adaptable workforce, ready for whatever comes next. Reskilling, similarly, can slash recruitment cost cheaper to train internally than hire externally. It helps identify hidden talent already inside the company.
Finding internal stars.
Yeah. Develops employees, creates a more versatile team, helps meet future skill needs before they become a crisis, and honestly, it boosts the company's reputation as a good employer.
So, just to recap.
Yeah.
Upskilling is getting better at what you do. Reskilling is learning to do something new. What's driving this huge push right now?
It's really a perfect storm. The sheer speed of technological change is one thing. Then there's the rise of automation and AI, which are making some tasks and potentially some jobs obsolete.
The disruption factor.
Exactly. And that massive skills gap we mentioned. Companies literally can't find enough people with the skills they need, so developing their existing talent becomes not just nice to have, but a strategic necessity.
Okay, so if a company wants to do this well, what are some effective ways to actually implement upskilling and reskilling programs?
Well, it really has to start with understanding what skills you actually need. Now, and looking ahead, a proper skills gap analysis.
Know where the holes are.
Right. Then you need to weave this into individual employee development plans. Make it personal. Leveraging technology is key here. Things like learning management systems or LMS platforms.
Yeah, I've heard of those.
Digital adoption platforms or DAPs, which can help people learn software right within the application itself. Knowledge management systems to share expertise. The goal is to make learning accessible, ideally right in the flow of their daily work.
Learning while doing.
Kind of, yeah. And critically, you have to measure if it's working. Get feedback, use assessments, see if the new skills are actually being applied on the job. Otherwise, you're just spending money on training without knowing the impact.
Makes sense. What kind of actual training methods do companies use? Is it all online courses?
No, there's a whole range. Cross-training is common learning adjacent roles. Mentoring provides that personalized guidance. Job rotation exposes people to different parts of the business.
Okay.
Peer-to-peer learning can be really effective, people sharing knowledge. And sometimes, yeah, you might need to outsource specific training if you don't have the expertise in-house.
You mentioned a few company examples earlier. Any others that stand out for how they approach this?
Sure. SupportWorks, for instance, focused on leadership development using a mix of online and face-to-face learning. IBM has this huge global goal to train, I think, 30 million people in new skills.
30 million, wow.
Yeah. McDonald's has its famous Hamburger University for operational skills. MasterCard uses a platform called Degreed for personalized learning paths. And another interesting one is Manpower Group. They used a DAP Whatfix to train staff on their main software system right within the app. Apparently, it had a great return on investment, and employees really liked it.
Those are great examples, showing it's not one size fits all. Okay, so to kind of bring all these threads together, performance, law, skills, let's look at Infosys again through their recent financial results.
Yeah.
How does this stuff play out in reality?
Right. So Infosys released their Q4 results for the fiscal year 25, the quarter ending March 31st, 2025. Their revenue from operations was around 40,925 crore.
Okay.
Now, for context, that was actually a little down from the previous quarter, Q3, but up compared to the same quarter the year before.
A bit mixed then.
Yeah. But what's really interesting, thinking about our conversation, is their employee benefit expenses. That line item was 22,015 crore for the quarter.
22,000 crore.
It gives you a real sense of the sheer scale of their workforce costs, their investment in people. Their profit for the quarter was about 7,038 crore. That was up from Q3, but down compared to Q4 last year. Now, what this might suggest, and this is just reading between the lines a bit, is maybe a strategic focus on retaining and developing talent, even if the top-line revenue fluctuated slightly. Something, you as an employee might look for signals of in your own company's reports.
Interesting angle. Were there any other nuggets in their report that connect back to what we've been discussing?
Yes, definitely a few relevant things. They announced dividends, which shareholders like. They also mentioned that cybersecurity incident at McCamish and reaching an initial agreement for a settlement.
Ah, right. That was in the news.
Strategically, they acquired a company called The Missing Link, which is a cybersecurity service provider. Makes sense given the McCamish incident, perhaps, and the general need for cyber skills. Looking at their different business segments just shows how diverse Infosys is. But the really crucial link back is in their forward-looking statements.
The Outlook section.
Exactly. They specifically call out risks related to intense competition for talent, their ability to retain personnel, and the ongoing investments needed to reskill and upskill their employees. It ties directly back to everything we've explored.
Wow, okay. That really does bring it full circle. So I guess the big takeaway for everyone listening is that managing a workforce today, it's just this really complex balancing act, isn't it?
Absolutely.
They've got performance expectations,
Sure.
You've got this intricate legal framework, especially somewhere like India, and then this constant, relentless need for adapting skills. And while this specific Infosys report didn't, scream layoffs, it provides that vital real-world backdrop for these bigger trends, whether you're an employee thinking about your own career path or an employer trying to build a strong team.
Right.
Understanding these legal bits, the ways to handle performance fairly, and just how critical upskilling is. It feels essential now.
It really is. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to ponder, doesn't it? For you, the listener, as tech keeps accelerating, how are we individuals and organizations going to proactively embrace this idea of continuous lifelong learning and adaptation?
Not just to survive, but to actually thrive.
Exactly. And what role will ethics and the legal frameworks we talked about play in shaping how all these workforce shifts happen in the future? Definitely something to keep thinking about.
Absolutely. Wow. This has been a really fascinating deep dive, covering a lot of ground. If you found this insightful, and you want more in-depth analyses like this one, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Seriously, we see the numbers, and a lot of you watching haven't subscribed yet. Help us keep doing these deep dives.
Yeah, subscribe.
We've got plenty more planned to help you stay informed and hopefully ahead of the curve. Don't miss out.